Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. While some theatre companies have responded to the coronavirus lockdown by releasing online monologues created by actors in their homes, Lawrence Batley Theatre in Huddersfield has been rather more adventurous in producing a star-studded multicast audio play recorded by each actor separately and then assembled by a crack team of sound designers. The play, The Understudy, is an adaptation by Henry Filloux-Bennett of a novel by David Nicholls about an actor who is failing in most aspects of his life. The proceeds from ticket sales will go to theatre charities the Theatre Development Trust, run by the Society of London Theatres and UK Theatre, Acting for Others, which itself is made up of 14 different theatrical charities that support people in the entertainment industry who have fallen on hard times, and the Equity Charitable Trust. Later, you can hear me speaking to Henry, the writer of the script, who will talk more about the story, and also to actor Mina Anwar, who plays Donna, the deputy stage manager. But first, here is director Giles Croft explaining how he first got involved with the project.
I came on board with the Understudy really via Henry. So Henry and I had worked together when we were both at Nottingham Place. I was the artistic director and he was the head of marketing and communications there. So we got to know each other and kept in touch a bit over the years since he left and since I've left. And he wanted to know if I'd be interested in working with him on an adaptation of the novel for stage. I said I did. I knew the novel. I used to know David a little bit, David Nicholls a little bit, so I've sort of got a connection with it. And I knew David Nicholls actually when he was an understudy at the National Theatre.
Oh.
So, the sort of story, though the novel is not about his time as an understudy at the National Theatre, there are sort of echoes of elements of his life there that will necessarily come into the story in some way. And so that's was a nice little coincidence. Yeah. We did a bit of preparatory work on it. We did a roundtable reading of it with some of the actors who actually are now doing this audio version. Then what happened. The world came to an abrupt pause, let's put it that way, rather than halt. And Henry had this rather brilliant idea of pulling people together to do this audio version to raise some money for a number of theatre-related charities, and what a great idea it is. Yeah. And he came back to me and said, "But would I work on this version of it?" And I said, "Yes, of course, I'd be delighted to." So it's been a sort of slightly circuitous journey, but really lovely to be here.
And it's very different to what the stage version would have been, obviously. It's recorded by actors at home and according to the press release, it's assembled by an exceptional sound design team, which I can imagine must be the case. But where does the director come into this process? Is it more like making a film where everything comes together more in the edit?
In a funny sort of way. I mean, the way we treated it was we organised a Zoom read-through. Right. So everybody could hear the play, see the people they were going to be acting with.
This is like your table read then, is it?
Yeah, it was like our table reads, exactly right. So we were able to do that over the internet, and it gave us a chance to outline the way the project would work with everybody. And then once that had happened, Henry and I went away and did some more work on the script. So he'd already made some adjustments to make it work as, let's call it, a radio play. And following the read-through, it was clear there were a number of other things we needed to do. So he and I worked on that. David Nicholls had some input as well because he also participated in this Zoom read-through. And so we sort of pulled those ideas together. Henry rewrote a little bit. And then after that, and once it had gone out to all the actors, I spoke to all the actors on the phone, just talking about how we were going to approach it, maybe a few ideas about some character stuff that I thought might be useful. And then really just said to them, okay, you let me know when you are going to be recording. I will be available on the phone or on email or whatever you want if you've got some anxieties or uncertainties, or if you want to send me some bits to listen to and I can give you some feedback. And that's how it's been treated. Some people have needed a little more feedback than others, partly because some people have got quite small roles to play and it's quite straightforward. Others have got a little more to do. There was a little more conversation or emailing or listening to extracts. And that has got us to the point where we now have nearly everything in. We're still waiting for one or two little bits and pieces. All their individual recordings were then sent. And so my job with the sound designers was to pick which of the versions, because I asked everybody to do a number of versions of their scenes, which of those versions or which bits of versions I felt were most appropriate for what we were trying to do. So now it's in the editing stage, and I'm being sent back the versions that are being prepared by the team, if you like, and responding to that. So actually today, there's been quite a lot of, okay, that bit doesn't work, and we've got to re-record that. We've got to go back to this actor and say, that just needs to be rethought slightly. And at the same time, giving feedback to the technicians to say the mix isn't quite right, or could we have a bit more of this rather than that in the scene. So yes, it's a weird combination of film, radio, and something unlike anything any of us have ever done before.
Yeah, it must be frustrating as a director in a sense that when, unlike the film, when the recordings are actually being made, you're not there. You've just got to wait to get the results, I suppose, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we would get sent 3 or 4 versions of, each scene with just one person's voice.
Yeah.
So the other thing you're trying to do, of course, is you're trying to match that up to what the other person, how the other person might have tried to say it, or what you did or didn't have when that came through. And remarkably, it sort of works.
Yeah.
I think the fact that we did it all together, so everybody's heard the play and heard other people's voices, has been a real help, actually. I think if we hadn't done that, it would be harder than it's turned out to be. But at the moment, the people who are doing the real work, really hard work, are the people who are sort of what we used to call splicing it, I suppose. They're sort of editing it together, so they really are having to go, Christ, I've got to take that line out of that version because this version, which may be the heard version, didn't quite work. The sound wasn't quite right on it, there's a bit of a pop on it, or, all those sorts of complications are coming out now.
Yeah.
But it's rather good fun.
Yeah. It's a bit easier than the days when it was on a splicing block with a razor blade, but even so, it's quite complicated, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very, very complicated. I in one of the email exchanges with one of the technicians, with Annie, I talked about splicing, and she came back and said, sorry, I don't understand what you mean.
Yeah, check your history books.
Yeah.
A lot of theatre companies and artists are putting drama online, some of it old stuff that they recorded in the past, and most of it is free or they're asking for donations. But this is different in a few ways, isn't it? This is one where you've got to buy a ticket, and it's in 2 parts, like a proper serial, isn't it?
Yeah. It's intended absolutely to raise some money. And for very specific causes, which is to help people through difficult times. So the actors are giving up, who are doing it, are giving up their time, which is fantastic. And all the money that comes in via the ticket sales goes to the named charities. So, yeah, that's a terrific thing about it. And we felt that though the play is not that long, let's say it's 2 hours, 10 minutes altogether, there's something about getting people to sort of schedule their time over 2 weeks, if you like, sort of one week, one the following week, which felt rather exciting and fun about it. It felt a bit different. And actually, I think to get people to listen to something for 2 hours straight through is sometimes a bit tricky anyway, in that way. So it felt like it's been a really good discipline for us as well. I think it's helped us to focus the work, because it's such a complex little thing to pull together. Having 2 sort of clear markers on it, those 2 dates, has made us go, okay, we really have to focus on this bit, get this bit right. We've got a bit of room, bit of leeway with this other section, then we can take a bit more time over that. So it's really helped, I think. Yeah.
So you can put off some of the editing for part 2 a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not having to do the whole thing in one go, get it all done. So it's bought us a bit more time.
Yeah. And the charities are all related to people who suffered because of the virus, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very clearly designed to assist people through what's a very difficult time.
Looking back, I noticed it's 4 years ago when you spoke to our Midland editor, Steve Owen, when you were last on the podcast. And that time you were artistic director of Nottingham Playhouse, like you mentioned before. You left there in 2017. So what have you been up to since then?
I've been fortunate that my production of The Kite Runner
it's done quite well, hasn't it?
It had touring. A couple of times it's been out touring, which is lovely. It was actually in the middle of a tour, or near the beginning of a tour, when all this happened. So we'd just done Aylesbury, Dubai, Clwyd, and Richmond. Quite a strange little set of gigs. So we'd done those 4 weeks of the what was going to be a 4 or 5 month tour, and then we had to pull it. So that's a real shame. But hey ho, these things happen.
Yeah.
And apart from that, I've done bits of teaching. I've done a one-man show that I'd written and performed, and that I've done a few performances of. Obviously this. I've been in the happy position of having enough work to keep me occupied, but also, after so many years of actually working in buildings, enough time to, do other things that interest me. So it's been nice.
So you've no desire to take on another theatre building at this stage?
No, or any stage. I've been doing that sort of work. I'd worked in buildings without a break since 1985.
Right.
So, that was when I stopped being a freelance. So it's rather nice going back to being a freelance.
Yeah.
That's the lucky position I'm in.
So I know everything's a bit uncertain at the moment, but as far as you know, what do you have coming up after this?
Well, that is a little harder. Funny enough, just before talking to you, I was having a conversation with somebody about a project I was meant to be doing this autumn, and they were saying, well, look, we're just not going to really think about it until something for next year. And I would imagine that's going to be the way with most things. What I am looking to do, find some projects, maybe not the same as this, but similar things to this, like everybody else. They sort of think, oh, God, I've got this thing, and maybe this would work online. And do some more writing. That's the other thing I've done throughout my life, is writing for theatre. So I'm also going to spend a bit of time doing that.
Yeah. Do you think at the end of this crisis we're going to end up with maybe a new art form that continues on even when the theatres are open again?
I can't imagine that there will be a situation in which that wouldn't happen. I think we'll all have found challenges and opportunities out of this that we've liked and will be able to develop. So I think that will be the case. I'm sure that things will return to a version of norm, but I can't see that all this work that's going into making these sorts of projects happen will be set aside and forgotten. I think people are, I hate to say this because people might get in touch and say I'm wrong, but I think people are rather enjoying these sorts of opportunities, actually. I mean, this Understudy project is a perfect example of something that couldn't have happened under any other circumstances. It wouldn't have been thought of in this way. The evidence of it so far is it can work. It won't replace other things, but it will be an additional. It's another way of working. Yeah. And that's a really good thing. It's a really terrific piece of work, actually, and Henry's done an excellent job of adapting it. Henry's version is really excellent, really, really excellent. Good fun. It's going to be very enjoyable for people who listen to it, there's no question about it, and it's got a fantastic company. I mean, it's a fantastic group of actors working on it. So, yeah, it's a great bunch of actors, a terrific version, very enjoyable piece of work, and the novel, I think, has been somewhat neglected over the years because David Nicholls' other novels have been so successful, and maybe it'll introduce people to something that they'll enjoy.
That was Giles Croft, the director of The Understudy, which features a cast including well-known stage and TV actress Mina Anwar. I asked Mina to tell us about the part she's playing.
It's a stage adaptation of David Nicholls' novel, The Understudy. And actually, it's an adaptation, so not all the characters play the same as they were in that. And Donna, who is actually the narrator in the novel, I play her, and she's like the DSM. So she's for those of non-theatre people, which we hope lots of non-theatre people will listen in, even though lots of theatre people will get it, the ins and outs of our industry when we're in the theatre. A DSM, which is the deputy stage manager, she's the one who looks after everyone, really, calls people for rehearsals, sits by the director and takes notes, and also looks after the book, which is lighting cues, everything's written down, scripts, all of that. DSMs are so absolutely integral in our industry, and sometimes they don't get as much praise as they need to do.
Probably the hardest working person on any production, really.
Well, they are actually coordinate everything, and also they have to be really good at a multitude of things, because in rehearsals they have certain tasks like making sure that everyone works to time, has breaks, looks after the book, which is, if somebody makes a move, you have to write down, you have a kind of, I suppose it's, if you have, I directed a play, a musical recently, and the DSM is everything, because they write down everything you say. So if somebody moves to the left, exit stage left, they have to write it all down, and then if you change it again, they have to keep a list of changes. And then when they get into the theatre, which is where Donna kind of comes into her own, is that she does all the calls, when anyone's called to the stage, and just is generally around with the company stage manager. So, but in this version, we don't have that. We just have Donna. And she's quite an interesting, it's a lovely character, the way that Henry's adapted that, because obviously Stephen Fry's playing the narrator. And so Donna has she has her own kind of theatre life in this version, which is great.
Are you getting to see some of the problems that, as a director or an actor, the little decisions that you make in rehearsals cause for everybody else by playing a DSM then?
Well, not really, because this version we've done via Zoom, so we haven't had any rehearsal. So you come in with all of that, that's what's amazing about this particular production, which is done for lockdown, which is we had a Zoom, we got asked to do it, and we had a Zoom read through. And then, I'm among some extraordinary people who know how to kind of live the story and create characters that they know immediately without a rehearsal. So I've spent 30 years in the theatre, and a lot more before that when I was training. So DSMs I know very well. And so therefore you just create to what you know.
Yeah, it's a pretty impressive cast list overall, but you don't actually get to ever meet, do you? I mean, you met on Zoom, but you're not actually getting together to rehearse together or anything, are you?
No, it was just done. We did it 2-3 hours over an afternoon. And obviously some people we know, like Stephen Fry, I've worked with Stephen, and people's work that that you've seen, like, Sarah Hadland, Sheila Atim. There's lots of people, Russell Tovey. There's so many people that when you see their faces, it's amazing, because they're suddenly in your living room, But what's also lovely about that is, anyone who are fans of people that you're suddenly seeing sitting in your house, is that you don't have that. I was talking about this the other day on a podcast, which is people always assume that read-throughs are, people sail through them. But, a lot of people don't like first days of rehearsals. They find it very awkward because it's quite challenging for some people to be in a group full of strangers. And as an actor, we invariably over a career will have many times where we meet a group full of strangers face to face and have to deal with our own, social anxieties, or the way that we just want to kind of just read. And not everyone is very good at meeting new people. But what was nice is you could see everyone. Not everyone, you're not forced to say hi, shake everyone's hands, introduce yourselves. And you could just get on with the work, which was it was really refreshing, actually. It was very nice to be able to do that with people that you don't know, but know that you're actually part of something that we're raising money for charity, obviously, where we're raising money for actors and people in our industry who self-employed, whose work has literally disappeared while we're on lockdown. Whether I know we live around a lot of musicians. My husband is a musician, as a musical director, and work it's just gone. So unless you're one of these people who likes to do these online gigs, which is nice for people who struggle not to be creative at this time, it's actually an interesting time to just be creative and raise money for people who literally have no earnings coming in. So this is what this is for. Ultimately, it's for raising money for lots of charities, for actors. Yeah.
It's interesting what you were saying about the read-through, the first day of rehearsals. Once I was speaking to a director, Manchester director, and I asked him about whether he gets nervous for press nights, and he said he gets more nervous for the first day of rehearsals. Yeah,
and I know people everyone's different. But the thing is, as scared as you are going into a room full of strangers, is the same fear for everyone. You know, and then you just get on with the work, and then suddenly, you know, you're either able to chat. But something like this is interesting because you can literally sit in your own house and have a little bit of your own comfort zone inside a place. You know, I mean, I know in the reader as well, I don't think you'll mind me saying it, but David Nicholls switched his video off because he likes to pace about when he's listening to read-throughs, which is, you know, and it's a funny thing to want to do. And if you're in a room and someone's pacing about, you might find that distracting. So what he said was, you know, I like to pace about. I don't want to distract anyone. So he just switched his video off. And then he could listen with his ears and not watch. And what's nice is we did a read-through where literally you don't even have to be looking at the screen or looking at anyone. You could just listen, which is what this show is and will be on when it's online.
Yeah.
Like the best of a radio show that's been edited together from people sitting in their own homes.
Yeah.
Doing their versions, you know, doing their lines.
How have you found it technically? How has that worked? I mean,
it's great.
Do you have a studio at home, or did they?
Yeah, we have a studio anyway because my husband, like I say, is a musician.
Yeah.
And we have a, you know, fully recording studio at home where I do a lot of singing because I'm a singer as well. I do a lot of singing. So we have a setup that's broadcast quality and very straightforward to do. Yeah. But I know a lot of people have had these little kits sent out so that they could get amongst the technology, you know. And the thing is for me is that my husband was the engineer, so he could record and send it off and do all the technical things. And hopefully it sounds great. What's nice is people getting amongst the technology, but also, you know, Henry and Giles have helped people, and Annie, who's the person who's coordinating all the sound engineer, and who's editing it, all the pieces together, to get people bits of kit that they could just very easily record with, you know.
Yeah.
And as long as your head's under a duvet and you've got no noise coming in, even though my cat was meowing and, you know, it's fine. But if you've got somewhere that's acoustically, you know, where you're not hearing too much extraneous noise, it should be very interesting to listen to, actually. Yeah.
Has this made you think doing this that maybe there's something in this for the future? Maybe there's something you could do more of?
No. No, there's nothing to be sitting in with people and reacting and acting with people and with the director. There's nothing. This is for now. Yeah. I mean, you say that for the future. Most of us do a lot of radio.
Yeah.
That is what radio is, you know. But we do sit with each other and do. There's to be an actor. I mean, I'm saying that. I've just recently played Shirley Valentine, which is.
I saw you, yes.
A one-woman So one-woman show where you're literally acting. There's just you and the director and the DSM in a room. So, and it was wonderful to do and I absolutely loved it. I loved rewriting it with Willie's permission to Lancashire. But I just finished doing last year a massive 13-piece ensemble, Life of Pi. So as you go from one thing to another, we're very privileged to be able to do all that and do some radio, do some voiceovers while we're at home. You know, we're to be able to do that as well, to have all those things. But in the future, you know, however the landscape is when we come out, it's going to be very interesting, you know.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how long it takes for people want to sit together in the theatre, and because behaviours have changed, you know, because it only takes a certain amount of time, you know, for behaviours to become kind of how people are. And then you just want people to be able to feel safe and relaxed to sit. But what's amazing is, I was reading something the other day, is I think all these subjects that people find that we've recently had the funding cut at schools, for instance, are now coming into their own because it's what everyone is doing, is what everyone's doing now, apart from homeschooling their kids and making sure that, you know, they've got enough facilities and resources to keep their children educated and entertained. But the entertainment comes from us, the people who are providing. You know, what a lot of the government recently have said that they don't want to give any funding to. But that is the way that the mental health of the country and the world is being monitored, is through having an outlet to creative arts. Yeah. And I think hopefully when we come out that people will see as much as the key workers are, the NHS workers, obviously the police, and people who keep us fed, keep the shops open, the nurses, the doctors, you know, the cleaners who work in the hospitals, all these people, that the other side of that is watching telly, watching films, listening to music, you know, dancing. all of those things it's all balanced,
Yeah, suddenly we're entertaining each other at home instead of doing something out and then just coming together to sit in front of the telly. The entertainment at home has become more varied, I suppose, hasn't it?
Yeah, and the thing is, and now we, the ones who aren't getting self-employed and not getting any money, I'm sorry to be very political about it, but it is a political thing. It's a social political environment we're in, is that we have been told as people, as taxpayers, self-employed, who won't get any money till June, but at the same time, you can watch work that we've done, you can feast on the things that we have provided and paid tax for, and we've been employed to do for years. And yet at the same time, we've been told that we won't get any money from the government till June at the earliest. It's that's my political point for now. I'll stop being like Ben Elton. So that's fine. I'll stop now then. Anyway, talk to me about the understudy. More importantly, that's why we're here.
I was going to say, following on from that, actually, I noticed on Twitter this morning you mentioned about you were asking theatre companies not to ask actors to work for free during the lockdown. Is this something that you've seen happen a lot?
I'm not asking them. I'm just going off. I don't put things on Twitter just per se.
Yeah.
For any other reason other than I think it's important that when we're at home and everyone is available, everybody is.
Yeah.
There's nobody not free. But what we do have is that we have our families at home with us. We have the people that are kids, our dependents. So to ask people to do 5 or 6 hours work, it's got to be for work. We earn a living from it.
Yeah.
And as much as we do things for charity, which is amazing, all of us, I don't know anyone who doesn't do things for charity because we all want to be of service as well, especially people who've been in the industry a long time. I think there's a certain amount of service that you want to be of because you have a certain amount of expertise that people want to call on, which is an extraordinary thing. But I think it's important that, if money is there, remuneration for actors, skilled workers, as any other skilled worker, that you just, even if I do a lot of work for free, but what I do ask for is my bus fare or my tram fare or, my train fare. So just see it like that. If you're a company who can't afford, all of us are doing this stuff for the Lawrence Batley Theatre, Huddersfield, and I'm sure a lot of those, I live not 13 miles from Huddersfield, but I'm sure a lot of people in the cast, they don't live anywhere near Huddersfield.
Yeah.
But we're all being paid, and that payment is a remuneration. You're not asking anyone to travel. You're not asking anyone. But what's nice is we're all doing it because we're raising money for something. Yeah. So unless it's for charity, if you want 6 or 7 hours of me doing some work for you, then pay my wage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like anybody, pay your wage, pay something towards the artistry, or give that money to charity. It's fine, but it's an important thing, I think.
Yeah, because a lot of actors and writers and artists generally, they're asked to do things for the experience or for the exposure quite often by people who are getting paid themselves for it, aren't they? Yeah,
and I think right now, that because we're all available,
we
all want to be creative, but you have to draw the line somewhere because 6 hours here, 7 hours there, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time and energy, because any one of us will do that work for you 100%. It won't be like phoning it in, because it literally is.
Yeah.
It could be the epitome of phoning it in, because we're phoning it in, but that's not what we do. We're providing you with our artistry and our craft,
Yeah. As you said before, the last time I saw you were frying chips in Bolton Library as Shirley Valentine.
Yeah, I know. What a dream that was now, it seems, to be in a room full of people, packed out, sold out show, people coughing liberally in your face,
And quite close as well in a place that size.
What an amazing show.
You just about managed to finish it before the lockdown, didn't you? But is there anything else that you had to cancel or anything else that you
No, I had a couple of, we had a holiday booked because my husband and I we both work, and we have to plan our holidays at a point where we think, right, let's just book it, and then say that we won't take any work at that point. Otherwise, things start coming in, because my husband's a musician. He had gigs cancelled, he had theatre shows, that literally got cancelled because of the virus.
Yes.
But we had this holiday booked, and so we would be on. I wouldn't be talking to you now. I'd be in Tenerife because I don't put the phone on. Oh, no. So we won't do that this year. That's got cancelled.
Yeah.
And I did a game show for BBC Two House of Games. I was doing that, and that was the last thing I did. And that's I went to Glasgow to film that, and literally 2 days before lockdown. And even Glasgow then was like a dystopian novel. Yeah. It was just quiet and eerie, and everything had kind of shut. And we were the only people in the building recording, and then it just all shut down. So
yeah, I mean, you've done Doctor Who, so it feels like a Doctor Who story in a way, doesn't it?
It was, yeah. And also the show I was doing in the West End, which was meant to start at the end of May, Life of Pi. Yeah, that's actually been pushed to September now. So who knows? And that's to do with the fact that it's not to do with the fact that we could all be out of lockdown by then, end of May. It's got a lot to do with whether audiences will still have the courage to go to a theatre.
Yeah, yeah. To sit on public transport to get there as well.
Yeah, and also, they want the money. There's a lot of factors going to making a show and putting the best show on. And also then, but you've got to have the punters to watch. Yeah. That's a lot to do with it. And you've got a lot, and what was amazing is the week before lockdown, I had a couple of weeks off after doing Shirley, that I just thought I wanted to go out, and I went to London to see my friends, and I saw 3 amazing shows that were packed. Yeah. It was still the beginning of people being more careful, but the pubs were still open, the theatres were still open, the restaurants. And I went to see Message in a Bottle, which was Kate Prince's amazing dance piece at Sadler's Wells about the refugees. Yeah. That was set to a Sting soundtrack, which is an extraordinary piece of work. And I went to see Upstart Crow, which was just packed to the rafters. But people still being very mindful of washing their hands, not coughing, being careful. And that was the beginning of people literally going, I'm not going to shake your hand, I'm going to just elbow you. And you go, what are you doing? How weird is this? And people go, no, I can't shake hands now. I went to visit my friends at the stage door at Jamie, and they weren't letting people in. So I had to speak to people through the door. And it's like, hi, how are you? Yeah, we don't know how long we're going to be open, And I went to see Robert Lepage's 7-hour epic at the National. And that's the last 3 things I saw. I mean, an extraordinary week of theatre. And that was that.
Yeah. Well, when the theatres closed, I just booked in that week to see Robert Lepage himself at the Lowry in Salford. But obviously that never happened. He went back to Canada.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because he was coming there, and the dance piece, Message in a Bottle, was just about to go on tour, and it was just going to go to the Lowry that first week. And so that whole tour has been cancelled as well. So
yeah.
And here we are.
Here we are, yes. With the Understudy. What's the one thing that you say, apart from obviously it's a good cause, what's the one thing that would sell it to people? Why should people listen to it?
I think firstly it's written by David Nicholls. He's you will know from doing Start for 10, One Day, loads and loads of things. This adaptation by Henry is brilliant. The cast is stellar, and just going from the read through, which was all we did is read the things at home and then do this massive read through. Giles Croft, the director, and also just give something back, to all the things that you have been watching in lockdown or listening to, is created by skilled craftsmen and women, and any other binary gender things in between like that. So what I'm saying is that we provide this for you to do, and all we're asking is to give £5, listen to it over a couple of days. And it'll just provide some cushion and some money to people whose jobs have disappeared, who aren't being employed to create art for you for a while, and were self-employed and have got no money. So these charities provide, the Actors Benevolent Fund, these different things for struggling people who need to live and feed their kids and have their mortgages, and that's what this will do for them. And hopefully you will enjoy it because it's brilliant fun. It's really, really nice. Hopefully it won't be too in-house, kind of theatrical, but I think everyone will really enjoy it. And even if you do none of those things and you just want to listen to Stephen Fry narrate, please do that as well, because he is phenomenal and beautiful, and how wonderful to have a cast like this to come together and create it. And also, don't forget, it's been created in lockdown. So none of us have actually met to read our lines. So when it sounds like we're responding, we're doing that from our artistry as well, in your imagination. So that's great. It's beautiful. Wonderful. And Henry, hats off to Henry at Lawrence Batley Theatre in Huddersfield. Regional theatre is everything to me. As it's as much of a success to be in a great regional production as it is to be on Broadway or be in the West End. I think it's phenomenal work. So big up the regional theatres, because they're the ones who will suffer as well, because they don't get as much funding. So we have to give something back, definitely.
That was Mina Anwar, who plays DSM Donna in The Understudy, adapted by Henry Filloux-Bennett, Chief Executive and Artistic Director of the Lawrence Batley Theatre. When I spoke to Henry, I asked him to start by explaining a bit about the story.
The Understudy is a play based on a novel by David Nicholls. It's about a failing actor. He's failing at just about everything in his life. He's failing at being an actor. He never gets the parts he wants to get. He never really amounts to much on stage. He's failing at being a father. His 11-year-old daughter hates him and is mortally embarrassed about almost everything he does. And he's failing in his love life, and his wife left him a couple of years ago because he just wouldn't grow up or take any responsibility. So this play is really all about what happens if the tides turn and fortune looks favourably on him, and it looks like it might. He gets an understudy role, understudying the lead character in a massive new West End show, starring one of the most famous people in the world, a fictional character, not a real one. And this play really is all about what the chances he'll take to get on stage and to understudy, and for him to play the leading role in a West End show. It's sort of about what happens when we get those opportunities. How do we respond to them?
Yeah. Well, you do have one of the most famous people in the world in the cast, in Stephen Fry, don't you?
And we do, yeah. He isn't playing
no.
the main character, but yes, he is. Yeah, he's a great name to have on board.
Yeah. I believe you actually brought this to Giles Croft, the director, originally. So how do you discover it? What appealed about this to you?
Sure. So I read the book probably about 5 years ago when I was working at Nottingham Playhouse for Giles, actually, who used to run Nottingham Playhouse. And I think he may have even suggested that I read it. I read it and I loved it, and I thought it would make an amazing play. It's obviously about theatre. It's a sort of a love letter to theatre, so it made perfect sense to put it on stage. So I tried to track down the stage rights for it. They were locked up, unfortunately, or great for David Nicholls, but unfortunately for me, they were locked up in film rights because they were trying to make a film of the book. And again, luckily for me, but unfortunately for David, the film rights lapsed a couple of years ago, and I immediately got in touch and said, could I get the stage rights, please? Yeah. So I adapted it, and it's always been supposed to be a stage play, so I hope that at some point it will become a stage play. But when this whole awful coronavirus situation struck, I thought it might be a good idea to try and A, raise some money for the theatre industry, but B, to try and give the Understudy some life. And it felt like it could exist as a radio play, so we asked a few people, and luckily Giles was up for directing it. He's always been due to direct it on stage, and then we couldn't believe our luck when it came to the names we managed to attract, which is great.
Yeah. So, in effect, you've adapted it twice, once for the stage and then again for audio. So what was the process of adapting it?
Well, it's been quite a challenge, I have to say. So the adaptation for stage was relatively straightforward in that I didn't have a time limit. So I used to work at the Lowry, which commissioned this piece of work, a bit like Toast, which they also commissioned from me. And I sort of had about a year's worth of weekends and evenings to get it done. So that was the easy bit. And then suddenly Giles, when this radio play came up, Giles said, well, you're going to have to rewrite the whole thing for radio, don't you? So I sort of hadn't anticipated that. So about maybe 4 days worth of furious rewriting and staying up all hours to try and make it work happened. And then we found out that Stephen Fry was going to take part as the narrator, which is a new part, so we extended that part to try and give him more space. So yeah, the radio adaptation was a frenzied process, and I think the stage adaptation was a really nice, simple process.
So what was it like when you were watching the read-through when everybody was on Zoom together?
It was probably one of the most surreal experiences of my life, I think. I'm really fortunate in that we've had a workshop of the play before. So Russell Tovey, who's playing the lead part in it, he was actually part of the original workshop read-through that we did.
Right.
So I knew that he'd be great, and I'm really lucky that we've managed to get some actors who I know really well, who I've worked with before, like Marie Lawrence and Lizzie and Muncey, and James McNicholas and Jake Ferretti, who I've worked with on projects before, who were amazing. So I knew they'd be great. But I think suddenly seeing Stephen Fry, who was actually, as it happens, the first person who joined the Zoom read-through, so we had to have that really awkward, you don't know me, I don't know you, you've never heard of me, and thank you so much for reading this play. We had to have that very awkward chat for a few minutes before everyone else joined us. It's just been an amazing experience. To have those sorts of comedy voices and comedy legends like Sarah Hadland and Mina Anwar, to have Layton joining us, who I thought was amazing in things like Rent, and everybody's talking about Jamie, but I never realised just how amazing he could be as a straight actor in a comedy. And yeah, it's just Emily Atack. It's just been absolutely incredible.
Yeah. You mentioned before about these commissioned by the Lowry, who also commissioned Toast. Now, Toast, the one based on a memoir by Nigel Slater, that's done quite well, hasn't it, over the last few years?
Yeah, who knew? It's had a very charmed life. I think one of the most amazing things about Toast is the warmth that people have towards Nigel Slater.
Yeah.
I think anyone who's got a TV or has ever cooked before knows who Nigel Slater is. But I think one of the most amazing things is the absolute warmth and love that people have for that man is just incredible. And I think that's the reason the play did so well. I think it's a relatively okay play. I hope I would say it was directed phenomenally. Obviously, the cast were amazing, but really, at the heart of it, the audience responded to the warmth of the personality that is Nigel Slater, and he was at the production so many times when it was at the Lowry, then in Edinburgh, then in London, then on tour. He was at every single venue it went to, and he really, it made such a lot of very special memories for a lot of people, and I'm so delighted it happened.
So what was that meeting with Nigel Slater, who you portrayed on stage, like the first meeting?
Firstly meeting Nigel Slater?
Yeah. Again,
pretty terrifying, to be honest. And just as terrifying, if not more, when I had to go and sort of pitch the understudy for David Nicholls. I think one of the things that you're really aware of when you're adapting a book, and I love that process of adaptation, but one of the things you're really aware of is that actually, although you're going to give it a spin and you're going to give it your own language and your own sort of pace and rhythm, you're working with someone else's material.
Yeah.
And particularly when that's someone like Nigel, that's his life. It's his growing up, it's his experiencing the death of his parents, it's his experiencing loneliness, isolation, coming to terms with who he is, what he wants to do with his life. All of those things are really, really powerful memories. And so I think actually the first conversation I ever had with him was on the phone, when he had given me, very generously, he'd given me the right to adapt it, knowing nothing about me. The first time I ever spoke to him, the thing that I couldn't get my head around was the fact that he sounded exactly the same as he did on TV. And I know that's a really stupid thing to get hung up on, but I couldn't quite understand that I was having a one-to-one conversation with a voice that I knew so well from TV.
Yeah. Both of these plays that we're talking about, they're both adaptations of novels, of books rather, of people who are still alive, so they're still there to react to them. But they're both on subjects that you've had experience yourself, because you have some chefing background, don't you? And obviously you've worked in theatre.
Yeah.
Have you brought that experience into the scripts?
A little bit. I mean, I think the reason why I originally responded and why Toast resonated with me so much was because I think anyone who's grown up will relate to a lot of the things that he goes through and he talks about in Toast. But I think one of the things that really got to me was that I had a very, very similar experience when it came to cooking. So I moved to London to try and work in a kitchen. I wasn't working at the Savoy where Nigel started, but I was working at Claridge's, so a very similar hotel environment and a hotel kitchen. So I was really aware that we were having very similar experiences for a period of time, and I think that really resonated with me. So I think it's helped certainly understand a little bit more about how food can work. But really, Toast isn't about being a chef or working in a kitchen. It's about the memories and the the sorts of stories that we attach to food, and we've all got those. So I remember, even though, you know, there's only a few years difference between me and Nigel, but even with that generational gap, I could still know exactly what butter and butterscotch angels light will make me think of, and it will take me back to a specific place, like it does with him.
Yeah.
So I think that's really what the food element has helped with, is to understand a little bit more about food per se, and certainly the delivery of food in the show, because that was part of the show.
Yeah, yeah. And this is the Understudy is produced by Lawrence Batley Theatre, where you've been the director and chief executive for a year now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is very different from the roles that you had previously at the Lowry and Nottingham Playhouse. But how has it been the last year? How have you been developing the theatre in that time?
I mean, it's been a really, really steep learning curve, I think, is the honest answer. I've loved every second of it. Well, no, I haven't. Obviously, in a job, you never love every second. But I've loved most of the seconds that I've worked there. And I think, actually, one of the things that I've been really proud of, or that I've tried to deliver to the LBT, is a sense that we can be driven by the sort of data analysis and audience insight that has been the bedrock of my career to date.
Yeah.
So understanding audiences is something that I feel an acute responsibility for, and doing what audiences want us to do, rather than potentially a slightly more artistic director-led venue, which is about a person's gut feeling or a sense of creativity or a personal drive. I've never really wanted to instill that in an organisation. I think actually we exist to serve our community, and someone has to lead that organisation, and I do that role, but my role is not to dictate to audiences what they will watch. My job is to listen to what audiences want and to try and help them get that.
Yeah. I saw an interesting piece in the Yorkshire Post from not that long ago, from the end of March, how Lawrence Batley Theatre has made Huddersfield a haven for dance.
Yeah, I can't take any credit for that, because that was all done by my predecessor, Victoria Firth, who did an amazing job in growing that contemporary dance audience. But I think, having worked at the Lowry, which is a home for contemporary dance in the Northwest, I think I came with that experience and that expertise. So we have tried to develop it, and we've tried to add a little bit of extra profile to that programme. But she did an amazing job in terms of developing that venue into this really strange and completely unassuming haven for dance, like you say, in the heart of West Yorkshire. It's crazy, but it's amazing. Yeah,
the Lawrence Batley. The last few years, it's become known for certain things, dance, and also the panto, the Joyce Branner and Andrew Pollard. It's suddenly a place that people are taking notice of, I think, isn't it?
Well, I hope so. And that's all credit, I have to say, to Victoria and Karen O'Neill, who's gone on now to run the Dukes in Lancaster, but was the exec director there for many, many years. I think that's a huge credit to them, that the LBT is getting the sort of recognition that I think it deserves regionally and nationally for some things. But I also think we're really fortunate in that we're able to build on that sense of reputation. So they've done the legwork, and now we get to enjoy the fruits of it, I hope.
Yeah. Obviously, you'll be closed at the moment, like everybody else is. Yeah. But what are you doing at the moment? Are you doing anything apart from the Understudy? Have you got any immediate plans for how you're going to survive the next few months?
Sure. Yeah, so we've already introduced something called LBTV, which is our new online channel, which everyone can access at the lbt.org. And that's a completely free new platform, and it has free activities, engagement, participation, workshops, masterclasses, storytelling. It has all of that every day of every week, and it's completely free. That's all content that we've created or generated or curated over the last few weeks. That will continue going as long as we're not able to operate, and we hope it will continue maybe as we go back to work. But we're also working on an online version of our exhibition, The Half. So we were really fortunate last year to work with Simon Anand, who's a world-class photographer. I'm sure you know him. And we managed to get an exhibition from him of completely never-before-seen pictures from The Half, which is his amazing collection of photos taken in the 35 minutes before a show starts. So we're in the process of putting that online at the moment for everyone to access, we hope, from the beginning of May. And we're also then working on another series of projects that we're trying to put the finishing touches to at the moment. So hopefully we'll be able to announce those in the coming weeks.
So do you, I know it's all very uncertain at the moment, but longer term, do you know, have you got any plans for what's going to happen? Do you have a season that you're hoping will start at some point?
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult, isn't it, at the moment, because particularly given that the picture seems to change on not necessarily a day-by-day basis as it was originally, but certainly a week-to-week basis.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to know really what's going to happen. So we have got an autumn season that we have rescheduled. We obviously rescheduled everything from March onwards, March until August, the end of August. We rescheduled the whole of that season. So that season now exists in the autumn and next spring. I think the question for us at the moment is how long will this thing last, and will we be actually able to deliver an autumn season? And if not, what else do we do instead? Because we can't keep on being dark. We have to continue creating because that's what we're there to do.
Yeah. And if this goes on, if it cuts into panto season, then a lot of theatres are going to really struggle, aren't they?
Completely, yeah. Like you say, panto is such a bedrock for so many theatres' finances, particularly. Something silly like 40% of all of our box office comes from the panto. So shows like that have to work in some way, otherwise we really, really will struggle.
Yeah. So anyway, back to the Understudy. It's a two-parter.
Yeah.
Do you leave us at the end of the first part on a cliffhanger that makes us want to tune in the next week?
Well, we hope so. So we've tried to keep it as much to the two-act model as we can. So we're just doing Act 1 in the first week and Act 2 in the second week. But I hope the audience is left with a bit of a question about what's going to happen at the end of Act 1, yeah. It's just that, unlike the normal show, you don't have to wait 20 minutes to see what happens. You have to wait a week.
It's a longer interval than usual.
Exactly.
That was Henry Filloux-Bennett, who has adapted The Understudy by David Nicholls as an audio drama to be streamed online to raise money for the Theatre Development Trust, Acting for Others and the Equity Charitable Trust. Part 1 will be released on Wednesday the 20th of May and Part 2 on Wednesday the 27th of May 2020. For more information and to purchase tickets, see www.understudyplay.com. You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.